Uniform Guidance is a government-wide framework for grants management and provides an authoritative set of rules and requirements for federal awards. It is the foundation on which federal agencies develop their policies and practices for grants and cooperative agreements, and any organization that receives federal funds is going to have to understand the nature of the guidance and how it applies. Now, most research administrators starting out in research administration don't know anything about the Uniform Guidance and don't hear about it until a little bit later. When they do hear about it, they may be hearing things like OMB circulars or uniform guidance. They may hear OMB guidance for federal financial assistance. There are a lot of different names by which this is known. One of the things to keep in mind is that many, many years ago when we first started doing grants, when I first started doing grants in the early aughts, and then around that is when there were a bunch of OMB circulars, and each of these circulars governed a certain part of the grants and the federal award process, and they're all over the place. Then in 2013, they consolidated all of them under the Uniform Guidance, and this became a uniform set of rules under which all of the federal agencies worked to set up their funding announcements and the notice of awards and how they managed it and how expenses were supposed to be tracked and submitted and how direct costs are applied, like all of anything that you would want to possibly know about related to administering a federal grant was located in this document. Then in 2023 and 2024, which is where we're at now, they realized that the amount of changes that had occurred over the last decade, somebody slaps on another guidance, there's a different requirement here, and it started to get really confusing in terms of how the agencies were applying the Uniform Guidance, the amount of paperwork and administrative burden that was existing around the Uniform Guidance, and the recipient institution's ability to adhere to these things. And there's a lot of administrative paperwork that is like gumming up the works. So they are revamping the Uniform Guidance to now be called the OMB Guidance for Federal Financial Assistance to make it less administratively burdensome, clearer, and more streamlined for agencies and recipients. Okay, so when you first start out as a research administrator, let's say this is your first day as an RA, or even like your first few months as an RA, you're going to be so busy trying to figure out what's going on and figuring out where the light switches are that you're not really going to have a lot of time to think about the circulars and the OMB guidance and things like that. But by the end of the first year, you do want to be familiar with what it is, a general framework of the guidance, how it applies, and how each of the activities as a research administrator basically are us operationalizing many of the activities discussed in the guidance. Now, the research administrator's job is essentially to synthesize information, your institutional policy, state and federal guidelines, agency requirements, academic guidelines. There's a lot that goes into the job. And though you are typically going to be hired into a role that says you need to do a lot of tactical work, you need to be able to do pre-award and you need to be able to do post-award and do cost transfers. And there's a lot of other tactical statements that go into job descriptions. You are essentially responsible for a lot of compliance, whether it's in that job description or not, and whether or not people say that that is a necessity of the job. Eventually, that is what the job becomes, because that is the framework under which we do the tactical work that we do. So if you're responsible for a lot of compliance, fiscal, and administrative activities, as you're learning the day-to-day tasks of your job in your organization, it can be frustrating to not understand the framework under which these things are built. So somebody says to you, here, you need to submit this grant, and then they give you the list of things you need to do, but there's not a whole lot of information about why. Where did this come from? Why is this important? How did this come to be, right? So the learning about the Uniform Guidance, which I will eventually get used to calling OMB guidance, but learning about this is going to actually help you feel a lot more capable and empowered, because you will then understand the underlying infrastructure that supports the activities that you do every day. For me, simply doing the tasks was fine, but if I don't understand the bigger picture and how the task fits into my overall job, I don't really feel like I am making a difference. I don't really feel like I have a lot of ownership, because then it's just doing a lot of individual tasks. It's almost like having a lot of puzzle pieces, but not having any idea where they fit into the puzzle. You don't feel very empowered or excited to put the puzzle together. If you have a picture of the puzzle or you have something to go with, then you feel like you understand what it is how it all fits together and what it is that you're trying to build. For me, some of the things that I remember that were, like, what is it about other support? Why is it important? How does it fit into the bigger picture? And then I remember when debarment became a thing and we had to do all of this extra work to make sure that no one who was being put on a federal grant was debarred. And I wanted to understand more about that. And I understood the process, but where does this come from? Why are we doing it? Where does it go? for every activity that we do, there are a lot of actions, right? And the question became one, why? And then the other question became, what questions do I need to ask to get the information that I need to be able to do whatever activity it is, right? So what should I be asking, right? Because you don't know what you don't know. And if you're new to research administration, you don't want to make a mistake. God, it's so anxiety provoking to feel like the mistake, like, oh my God, I don't want to make a mistake. But don't worry. The good thing is don't worry. Even if you haven't familiarized yourself with the uniform guidance and you're just starting out, your organization has got your back on that front. They likely have systems and processes in place to help you so that you're doing whatever it is that's compliant, even if you don't necessarily understand the uniform guidance behind it. Learning the uniform guidance will help give you a stronger infrastructure and make you feel more capable and more badass in your role. One of my intentions of doing these short videos on the OMB and the CFR section is to talk about how these things may apply to activities that you're doing in the day-to-day. And the thing to keep in mind is you look through these, like, because right now this is the video on the overview of the OMB guidance. I may not get to everything in it, and I'll do my best to cover what I would. So typically these are going to be what I would train in a regular training with a new RA coming on that I'm, because I've onboarded so many RAs over the years. There's a standard set of things that an RA needs to know in order to be successful in the role, right? So what I'm going to share is those kinds of things. The challenge, of course, is that when I'm actually training somebody, typically we have options for questions, and there's we have a few minutes afterwards, and then there's also like months and months of like emails and back and forth, and we're working together on something. So there's a lot more operationalization that I'm able to do, sort of to catch on the things that I may have missed and be like, oh yeah, about that. So one of the things that I sort of want to stress is that as I'm putting these together, these are things that I would put together if I was sitting with somebody and they asked me a question, okay, about X, and I just put it out there. So there may be things. There's going to be enough to get you going. There's going to be enough to get you to understand sort of like how a certain particular section of the document fits in with whatever activity it is. But in the end, it's going to be really important that you do familiarize yourself with your institutional policies. What does your organization have published about it? And also do sort of like your own professional and personal growth related, because personal growth related to OMB guidance. No, all the professional growth related to OMB guidance, just to ensure that you've got like the baseline that I'm sort of giving you here, and then you've got like what your organization expects, and then you are the bridge that is getting created. So that's the thing that I would think about. If you have any questions about this, the uniform guidance, the OMB circulars from 400 years ago, or the OMB guidance for federal financial assistance that's coming out, or any of the changes, please feel free, put a comment down, DM me, send me an email at me@manessa.com. And don't forget to head over to the Patreon for more videos, resources, additional snapshots, and checklists, all available for free at patreon.com/Manessa.